Hello, and thank you for visiting the SEDM website. This short video demonstration will show you how to transfer large files to us for processing or review. What kind of large files would those be? For instance, you may have large research files. And how large do they need to be? Well, typically you can only email things as attachments if they are less than approximately 3 megabytes. If you want to send us anything larger, then you would need to use this technique that we're about to demonstrate. An example of why you would need to do this would be if you wanted to send to us a copy of your master file decoder database because you had entered all the data and you wanted us to prepare a response letter or a rebuttal letter in this case based on the data for you to review and edit. The techniques that we're going to demonstrate can be accomplished on all the versions of Windows that are out there, from Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista, or Windows 7. The features that we are going to use in this demonstration are available in all of those versions of Windows, and they are built into Windows, so you don't need to buy special software in order to accomplish what we're going to show you. Now, an important thing to remember is that whenever you transfer files over the internet to our website, you need to make sure that those files are as small as possible so that the transfer time will be as short as possible. This is important for people who are in rural areas and who are using dial-up lines that are slow. And how do you make the files as small as possible? Well, typically you need to use a special utility called a zip program, ZIP program. And the two most common programs that do that are WinZip, W-I-N-Z-I-P, or PKZip. And both of those are available on the internet for a fee of between $29 and $59. Those programs have to be used to compress the files that you want to send before you go through the process that we're about to show you. And we have already done that on the files that we are going to send. In this case, we're going to send a master file decoder database file and it will be inserted inside of a zip file to keep it as small as possible. Typically, a zip program that does the compression can reduce the file size by an order of 50% so that the transfer will occur as rapidly as possible. So let's get started with the transfer. So the first thing we do is we come down to the Start button, we type in CMD, and this puts us in the DOS window. What you see here is what's called the DOS command prompt. This is a special window where you type in DOS commands. What is DOS? DOS is the disk operating system that's built into Windows, and it's used to do command line functions within Windows. And so we're going to enlarge the window here, just like we did here. We're dragging the right hand corner to make it as big as possible so we have the largest work area. And what you see in front of you is the directory where we are starting on this particular machine that we're logged into. And that directory is, in this case, is on a Windows XP machine would be the My Documents folder. It always starts in the My Documents folder for the user that you're in, that you're logged in as. In this case, the user is limited user, and all of the My Documents folders for all the users on the machine are contained in the users folder on the C drive. And there will be a subfolder underneath the users folder for each of the users on the machine. In this case, it's the limited user. So, and we're on the C drive, after the colon is the directory or the folder that we're in. So we're in the users folder, and we're in the limited user subfolder, which, as we said, is the equivalent of the My Documents folder for the currently logged in user. And why would we call it the My Documents folder? Because on a Windows 2000 or a Windows XP machine, That is what it would say if you opened up the Windows Explorer. It would say My Documents in the upper left-hand corner of the Windows Explorer. And that's where all your files would be. And we recommend putting the file that you want to send to our website or down into this folder before you begin the process that we're going to show you. And we've already done that. The file is already there. How do we know that? Well, if we type in a DOS command called dir, which stands for directory, dir, we just typed on the keyboard, and then we hit enter, we can see all of the files in this directory, which, as we said, is the My Documents folder or the current users folder on this particular machine. And we can see that in this folder we can see that there are several subfolders. dir here means folder in common parlance. So we can see there just about everything here is folders, and we can see there's only just a couple items here that are not folders, and that would be test.txt. Why? How do we know that's not a folder? Because it doesn't say dir over here. Likewise, we have mfdecoder.zip. That's not a folder. It's a file. And we know it's a file because it has an extension as well, a .txt in this case for the test.txt file, or .zip for a zip file. And that zip is a representation of the fact that this is a compressed file and that it was produced with a file compression program, such as WinZip or PKZip, as we mentioned earlier. And we can see that this particular file is 36 megabytes and in size, and whereas this one here is 295 kilobytes in size. Now, before you begin your file transfer, you should make sure, therefore, that the file that you want to send is in the directory that you're at. And if it isn't in the directory that you're at, then you need to change to the directory where the file is that you want to send. For instance, if you wanted to send a file from the D drive instead of from the C drive in the My Documents folder, then you would type in D : and then hit enter or return, and that takes you to the D drive. And that's what it says here, the D drive, D : / that means the D drive. Okay, then the right little arrow here means that this is a command prompt, and then the flashing cursor means it's waiting for a command. Okay, and if we wanted to change to, for instance, the temp directory on the D drive, we would do CD for change directory, we'd hit space, and then we'd type in literally TEMP and hit enter, and it takes us to that directory. And now that we're in that directory, we can send the file if that's where the file is. And how would we know if that's where the file is? We would hit dir. There it is. Okay, so you can see we also have a copy of the mfdecoder.zip file, the database file, the decoder file, in that directory as well. So we could send it from there, or we could send it from the My Documents folder, which was user/limited user. And so we're going to, in this case, we're just going to send it from the D drive in the temp directory. And the next step we need to do is type a DOS command, disk operating system command. And the disk operating system, as we said, is built into Windows. And if you want to know what commands are available in the disk operating system, you can type in a question mark and then hit enter or return. Actually, help in this case is what we do, and here's all the commands that are available. And if you want to scroll up and down and see all these commands, you can see them with this scroll bar here. Okay, so these are all the available DOS commands, and then after it gives us those commands, all the different commands we could use, then it takes us back to the command prompt again. Okay, so those are your DOS commands. Now, the particular command that we're going to use is File Transfer Protocol, or FTP. And it turns out that, guess what? FTP is not listed in this list of commands, but it is available as a built-in feature of Windows. So we will type in FTP, and FTP in this case is a program that's built into Windows. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. And before we initiate this, we need to actually let's change back to the local user directory instead. So change directory C:, because we have some test files there. So we change to the C drive, and there we are. Oops, not C, we wanted C:. There we go. So that takes us back to the C drive, and it takes us right back to the folder that we were in, and we can do a dir to do a directory of that folder again. And now we're going to send some of our files from here instead. Okay? And the file we want to send initially, to very quickly demonstrate how it works, is we're going to send the test.txt file. So let's first open an FTP session to the SEDM.org server. And in order to do that, we'll type in FTP, which stands for File Transfer Protocol. We'll hit a space, and then we type in the place we want to FTP to. Okay, and that would be FTP period SEDM.org, and then we type in enter. And now it's giving us a command prompt from within the FTP program, and it's asking us for the username that is on the FTP server on the SEDM.org website. So we type in this case, FTP user, hit enter, and then the password is going to be FTP user, same thing, and hit enter. And now we are logged in to the remote server. Now if we want to look at the files on the remote server, and by the way, now that we're logged in, notice the command prompt changed. We can see it used to be C:/ blah blah blah, which means that's a DOS command, but now the command prompt says FTP. So now we're talking within the FTP program, through the FTP program, running on the local computer, and we're talking to the SEDM.org website remotely. Okay, and the place we're talking to is ftp.sedm.org. That is the domain name for the other endpoint of this conversation. And now that we're logged into the remote server in the FTP user directory on the remote server, now we're ready to look at what files are on the remote server. And how do we do that? Well, FTP has its own set of commands, just like DOS has. And if we want to know what those commands are, we hit a question mark instead of a help command. So we hit enter, and here are all the commands available through the FTP program to talk to the remote server. We are the local server, and the SEDM website is the remote server. And don't be intimidated by this list of commands, because you're going to use a very small subset of them. The only thing you need to know about are the binary command here, and the possibly the delete, and the put, and the get. Okay, delete will delete the remote file, and the binary command will change the mode of the file sends and receives, and the put command right here will send a file, a local file, to the remote server, the SEDM server, and the get command, which is right here, will download a file from the SEDM website to your local computer in the directory that you started from before you executed the FTP server. So in this case, we started in the My Documents folder. So that is where the file would end up being parked if we downloaded it from SEDM. So we're at the command prompt, and we can run any of these commands, and the first one we're going to run is the binary mode, binary. And why are we going to do that? Because there are two main types of files that we can send and receive, and the first one is a text file like this here, tst.txt. That is the default mode. And then the other type is a binary file, which is everything other than a txt file. So for instance, in this case, mfdecoder.zip, that would be a binary file. So we have to transfer the file in binary mode. So we're going to type in binary, and there it is. Now it's in the binary mode. And now we're ready to send a file. And just to get started, and by the way, let me show you how to do a directory of all the files on the remote server. The other command we're going to use in the FTP is ls, which is going to list the files on the remote server. List server is what we call it. So ls, so list the server files, hit enter, and you can see that there's nothing on the remote server right now. The directory is empty, but that would present a list of files on the remote server. So now that we know that the remote server directory is empty, and we know that we're logged in, and we know that we're in binary mode, now we're going to send a sample file. In this case, we're going to send the tst.txt file to the remote server. And since we started in the directory that has all these files in it, then we know that file is still there. The FTP command will always execute relative to the directory we started in, which in this case is the My Documents folder, or the user/limited user folder, which is the currently logged in user. So on a Vista machine, instead of being called My Documents, it's simply called the username. So in this case, limited user folder on the local machine. So on a Windows 2000 or Windows XP machine, it would be called My Documents. On a Vista or a Windows 7 machine, it would be called you'd see the username in the upper left corner of the Windows Explorer. So we are now going to send a initial file just to show you how it works. So we are going to, and the command we're going to use is put. P-U-T is how we send files that are parked locally on our machine to the remote server in the directory that we started in, which in the case we said is the My Documents or the limited user folder. So we say PUT for put, and then we hit space, and then we type in the name of the file we want to send, which in this case is tst.txt. So and we have to capitalize it exactly the way it appears in the file list up here at the top. So tst.txt. If we don't do that, it won't work properly. So we're doing a put, which means send the file to the remote server, and then we specified the file name, and it's going to be sent in binary mode because we put it in binary mode here. And now keep in mind that even though this is a text file, and even though we could have sent it in text mode, we're not going to do that. We're going to send everything in binary mode. So we hit enter or return, and it's transferring the file, and when it's done, it'll tell you, there it is, file successfully transferred. So it took 5 seconds to send this file, and we sent the tst.txt file. So now the file is located on the remote server. How do we know that? Well, we could list the files on the remote server. So list the server files, ls, list the files on the remote server, hit enter, and there it is. You can see the file is up there. So the transfer worked just fine. And so that file has been transferred. Now we can use that same technique for any file. As long as we keep it in the binary mode, you can send any file as big as you want to us. It may take you a long time, and especially if it's a large file, or if you have a slow dial-up line, but you can send any file you want to us. Now keep in mind that the remote server directory is accessible to everyone, and therefore if the file contains personal information, then you probably want to make sure that you notify us immediately that the file is there. And how would you do that? Well, you would log into our opening page at SEDM.org, and you would click on Contact Us in the left-hand side, and then you would send us an email or a message letting us know that you sent us a file, and please download it immediately and delete it from the FTP server directory. And we will do that immediately so that your information does not stay up there for very long. So that's how we send files, and we can send files of any size. Now in this case, we sent a very small file. In this case, the tst.txt file was 295 kilobytes. So, and that took 5 seconds. So if we send something really large, that's, about, in this case, 90 times bigger than the file we sent, such as this mfdecoder.zip file, we can see that it's going to take a long time, but we wanted to go through the whole process to show you how it works, so that if when we do get started with the large file, which will take a long time, much longer than we want this demonstration to last, then you'll know what to expect at the end. You will always see at the end of the file transfer, it'll first when it starts the transfer, it'll say port command successful, then it'll say 150 connecting to the port 5948, and then you'll have a long pause, and then the next thing you'll see is a 226 file successfully transferred. So the time between the 150 and the 226 can be very long. In the case of the MF decoder, it'll take 90 times longer than this short file that we sent, because it's 90 times bigger. And if the short file took 5 seconds, then it'll take 90 times 5 seconds, which is a long time. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to send this large file, and it'll end at the 150 here, and then you'll see a big long pause for 10 or 15 minutes, and at the end of the 10 or 15 minutes, in this case, you will see a 226 file successfully transferred. In between that waiting period, you won't get any feedback. You just have to sit there and watch it happen. So in this case, let's try it. So we'll type in put, and then we type in the name of the file we want to send. Oh, and by the way, before we do that, let's try downloading the file that we just uploaded. So we could, in this case, do get will download from the remote server to the local server. So we'll say get, and we already know the file is there because we just sent it. So we'll say tst.txt. So this is how we download. We'll hit enter. There it is. So we just downloaded a file. So now we know how to upload files. We know how to download files. We know how to look at FTP commands if we want to experiment. Okay, and you can do whatever you want to that remote directory, because we normally don't park anything important there, and it doesn't. And if you do upload something, then we remove it immediately after you let us know that it's there. So anyway, the only other command that we want to explain is how to get out of the FTP mode when you're done, and that command would be quit, right here, QUIT. If you type in quit at the FTP command prompt here, then it will exit and take you to the DOS mode. Okay, and after you get to the DOS mode, then you want to be able to close the window. So you can close the window by clicking on the X here, or on the DOS command prompt, instead of the FTP command prompt, you would type exit. Okay, we're not going to transfer in this case MF decoder because it would take 15 minutes, but you already know how to transfer. So in this case, let's exit the FTP mode, quit, QUIT, and look what it did. It took us right back to the DOS command prompt. How do we know that? Because now it doesn't say FTP on the left over here. We still have a blinking cursor, but now it has the directory instead. So we know we're in the DOS command mode, and if we want to exit this window, if we want to close the window, we can click on X here, or we can type in, instead of quit, we would type in exit, EXIT, enter. There it is. So now we're done. So let's review that again very quickly. So we're gonna let's send a file once more very quickly. So we'll do a start CMD. The DOS window opens. We maximize the window by dragging the right hand corner, lower right corner, and then we do a directory to list the files, and then we do a FTP to ftp.sedm.org. We type in FTP user for the username. We type in the same thing for the password, FTP user. Now we're in the FTP command prompt, and now we're ready to send our file. So let's, we already know what files are available to send because we did a DIR before we logged into FTP, and these are the files we can send. And so let's once again send the file. So we'll say put tst.txt, and it's going to take 5 seconds just like it did before. There it is, it's done. So we sent the file, and if we want to make sure the file got sent, we can do an ls, list the server files, hit enter, and there they are. We can see the file got transferred. And the only other thing we have to do before we end this presentation is actually send the large file. And since it will take a long time, we will stop the presentation after we begin the transfer so that we don't waste a lot of space and energy. So we'll do in this case put, meaning send, space, and then we'll type in the file name, the large file name, which is mfdecoder.zip. We have to type it in exactly the way it appears, mfd, same capitalization, ecoder.zip. And then the only thing left we have to do is enter. And there it is. And now it's transferring. And it's just going to sit there and blink for a long time with no feedback until it's finished with the transfer. So just be patient. Don't hit break. Don't try to close the window. Just be patient and let it do its job. And when it's finished with the job, you will see at 226 files successfully transferred, and then it'll tell you how long it took to transfer and how many bytes were transferred and what the transfer rate was. And then it'll take you back to the FTP command prompt. And then once you're back at the FTP command prompt, as we said before, you can quit that by typing in quit, Q-U-I-T, and then that'll take you back to the DOS command prompt, and then you will type exit, and that will complete the process. So we've shown you everything you need to know about how to transfer files from your computer to the SEDM server using the put command, how to download files from the SEDM server to your local machine using the get command, and how to put the computer into binary mode. And I might point out that this last transfer we did was not in binary mode. We made a mistake. You need to make sure that you put it in binary mode. That's an easy mistake to make. Okay, if it's not in binary mode, the file will be corrupted when it gets uploaded. So make sure you put it in binary mode. This concludes our presentation. We hope that it's been informative for you, and God bless you.